The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, offering 40 years of media experience.
The Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek Trust, supporting arts, history, science, and this program on KPTS.
Fast becoming the go-to show for interesting and enlightening conversations, this is One-on-One. I'm Victor Hogstrom. This week, Wichita's head honcho spills the beans on life, politics, and the future of our fair city. In his first term, Mayor Jeff Longwell has made his presence known. He's more visible and accessible than some of his predecessors. Longwell is the city's chief spokesperson and promoter. He says his priorities include creating jobs and a more business-friendly environment in Wichita. How's he doing and what's in the works? And exactly who is the person behind the public persona? We go one-on-one with Mayor Jeff Longwell right now. Mayor Longwell, thank you so much for joining us one-on-one.
My pleasure, Victor. Happy to be here and looking forward to our visit.
You grew up in Wichita, born and raised.
Yes.
Tell us about how it was in the growing up days versus today, the 60s and 70s versus today.
Sure. Well, certainly Wichita is a different city today in a number of different ways. And I had a great experience growing up with a large family of there were 5 of us and siblings, 4 siblings. I have a brother and 3 sisters. And so we were very active outdoors all the time as youth and running around in the neighborhood like we owned it. And just a dramatically different time back then. You know, I was born in '59, so certainly times were much different back then. I think Wichita is a wonderful city. I truly have had the pleasure of living or traveling everywhere in the U.S. I've been to every major city in the United States and still love coming back home to Wichita.
So after you had grown up, went to college, got educated,
right.
What did you do? You were in the printing business, but before that you did something else.
So my family actually owned an automotive garage, filling station, and so I grew up in the automotive business and ran my own shop. At the age of 17, I was running my own place and working on cars and selling gasoline, and this was back when we had full service, so you could come in and get $1.50 worth of gas, and we would check the oil and air up all the tires and clean every window.
And you did not continue that business. Instead, you got into the
so
printing business.
I got into the printing business.
How did that happen?
So I had a good friend of mine that I went to high school with, actually, that got drafted by the Cleveland Indians, and when his baseball career ended, he went to work for this upstart printing company and ultimately talked me into getting out of the automotive business and going to work there. And so we started back in '83 with 3 employees, 5 employees when I got there, and we grew it to about 85 employees during the next 20 years and really enjoyed that career in the printing industry. Ultimately, we sold that company. I started my own company, had it for 10 years, and then ended up selling it when I became mayor.
But before you became mayor, you were on the school board of Mays.
So that's where I got my feet wet in local politics. And so one day I was sitting down with the owner of the printing company that I was the general manager of, and he said, look, you've got to pick something to get more involved in the community. I mean, he was just really big on community service. He was very active in the community in a number of different ways. Roger Bowles is his name. Still sit down and have breakfast about once a week with him. He's a wonderful gentleman who's a widowed now, but we try and get together. But so he said, pick something, but you can't pick the same things that I'm doing. So I said, I heard there was an opening on the school board. Go out there and get involved. So ultimately, I got elected to the school district out at a suburban school district that picks up a large part of West Wichita, and was successful and spent 12 years out there and enjoyed it, truly enjoyed it. I had the pleasure of giving all 3 of my children, handing them their high school diploma, which is quite a treat, and built relationships that have grown into the opportunity to be mayor of Wichita.
So how did that happen, running for the city council and becoming mayor?
You know, so it was one of those things where I really didn't know probably what I was doing. So as I was enjoying my time on the school board, built a relationship with the then council member for West Wichita, which was a big part of my school boundary district. And he said, you know, you ought to think about running for city council. And it was Bob Marks. And I said, Bob, I really not sure I have any desire to be involved with city government. I don't know city government. He goes, but you know business, and you've done a great job. I was president of the May School Board. I just think you ought to run for my seat, because he was retiring. And ultimately, I chose to do that and was successful. And as I served 2 terms there, it just kind of evolved in an opportunity to run for mayor, and obviously was successful 2 years ago when I got elected at a substantial margin. I was pleased that the people in this community elected me with a 25-point spread.
Wow.
That's hard to do.
That speaks highly of you.
Well, it's a great opportunity, so I was blessed with I think a community that was eager to see something.
So what are, in your opinion, the qualities of a good politician versus a bad one?
You know, I'm not sure I want to define that totally. I think we'll let the public continue to define that. I just think you need to be a subservient politician, a public servant, one that recognizes that you just simply are a voice of the people, and they grant you the opportunity sometimes to make decisions on their part, but also it's recognizing those opportunities when their voice needs to be heard directly. And so we look at opportunities to do exactly that, sometimes with referendum types of issues. In the meantime, it's one of those things where we can't run to them for every decision we make, since we make hundreds of them every week. And so we have to make sure that we are connected with the city and have their best interest in heart, and we can always find a difference of opinion. So it's the opportunity to evaluate the issue and then move forward.
Now, has anything about this position surprised you at all?
Oh, maybe the travel was more than I expected, because you're so involved in so many different assignments. I will be sworn in this year as president of the League of Kansas Municipalities, which means I represent every city in Kansas. And with that becomes
the Honorable Mayor.
The Honorable Mayor of Wichita now becomes a president of all of the cities of Kansas through the association. And so with that comes a responsibility to travel, to hear some of those issues that are impacting all of the cities in Kansas. And so I will take on those duties later this year. I'm heading to Mexico next week with a group of business leaders to try and mature our export market in Wichita, Kansas, which is vitally important to our economic health in Wichita. And with all of the stuff happening, we want to assure our friends in Mexico, which is all part of North America, that we want to be good partners and continue to grow our businesses together. And so the travel is more than I anticipated, and can be difficult at times as you are just get worn out. I could be somewhere every other week while I yet still have a lot of duties here in Wichita, Kansas.
You are nearing the end of your the midterm of your first term.
Right.
What would you say is your greatest pride or accomplishment?
So because I want to focus on quality of life opportunities, I will say that at this point in time, just seeing the opportunities develop along our river corridor probably give me the most satisfaction right now, and there's a number of them. We are seeing a building that is almost completed that will have boat and bike rentals available next spring to citizens, and so now you'll be able to go down on the river and rent a canoe and get in the water and see water activity in the heart of our town. You're going to see a new library open next year that's going to be a fantastic gathering place. We are in the process of building a new baseball stadium on the river. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting because we're replacing a stadium that was a WPA Works project from 1934 that is just simply tired. And so looking forward to building that and finding the resources to do that in a tough economy. Certainly investing in more quality of life opportunities, from performing arts to walking trails to bike paths to opportunities to program our river and utilize it in a fashion that we've never utilized it in the last 50 years.
So I understand that Wichita lags far behind other similar-sized markets in terms of employment.
Sure.
Markets such as Omaha and Des Moines.
Right.
What's the problem?
So I think we've relied too heavily on our aviation industry. Even knowing I have a son who's an aerospace engineer, and so aviation is still important to us. But we've needed to diversify for a long time. And we keep saying we're going to diversify. Well, finally we are. And so we have a new initiative called the Blueprint for Regional Economic Growth, where we're simply looking at 8 different sectors. Instead of just aviation, we're looking at healthcare and transportation and oil and gas and advanced manufacturing and IT. And we're focusing on those opportunities where we can truly diversify our job base so that we're not tied to any one industry. Mm-hmm. And so we're starting to see some successes there, but it takes a while to build that. Innovation Campus is a big part of that. And as you travel on 21st Street, not far from here, you'll see the expanding campus at Wichita State University that is much further along than anyone anticipated. And all of this started just simply 2 years ago. We started this BREG initiative just a short time after I became mayor, and we're starting to see some successes. So in the short time, we've changed our policies that allow us to mature economic development opportunities, and companies are excited about coming here. We kept Cargill, which was a big win, and it's drawing attention from places as far away as France. And so we have a company that's headquartered in France that are thinking about building an operations in Wichita, Kansas. And we think if that comes to fruition, that will really make a big difference for us.
Is the federal policy regarding employment and unemployment, is that having an impact on the city of Wichita?
So it does, but it's challenging. So that has changed too, because I'm on the executive team of Workforce Alliance, and the new laws pertaining to funding mechanisms for workforce have changed and can be very challenging. And, like all workforce issues that we deal with, we are not rewarded when we're successful, because as we put more people to work, our funding mechanisms decline. And so we get less funding from the federal government. But we know in Wichita, with an aging population in our workforce, that's going to be a challenge for us. And we want to make sure that we're prepared. And but workforce is so critically important for us, and those funding streams are important too, and hopefully we can continue with different partnerships.
How has NAFTA affected Wichita?
So I don't know that NAFTA has had a direct impact so much on what we're doing here in Wichita. So the North American Free Trade Agreement, we are a large exporter though. And so it does, I think, potentially open some doors. If we can continue to mature some of these markets that we are seeing that have a lot of potential, I think it'll be a good thing. We still would like to see some different trade agreements. We have obviously as a country have a negative trade in a number of countries, and we have trade agreements that are non-existent with certain countries that our friends in Mexico have, and so hopefully we can combine with some of those opportunities to reach some markets that we don't have trade agreements with. So in some cases it's too defined narrowly that have allowed us not to have some market shares in some countries. But I don't know that it has a direct impact on the businesses that we're exporting out of Wichita, Kansas, but we're a large exporter of goods and services.
You are human, although you're the mayor, elected by 25 points, but you must have some pet peeves. What are they? In reference to politics and people.
So I suppose I could be more patient. I'm a very impatient person, and so the manager hates it when I tell him that I'm frustrated with the speed of government.
I think a lot of people can understand that.
Being
sometimes.
a businessman, I'm obviously used to doing things quicker. And I understand some of that. Government was meant to be kind of slow, so that the decision process can incorporate as many voices as possible. Mm-hmm. And so it's really not always about just simply making a decision and running with it. You need to let the public weigh in, which slows down the process, and then you have to put out the kinds of notifications that allow that process to work. So government can be too slow sometimes.
You've grown up in Wichita and you've worked and lived here. You've become the top politician, the mayor of the city.
Yes.
In your opinion, what is the greatest injustice in our society today?
I will tell you, it's if we can ever figure out how to give everyone an opportunity in our city, then we're going to be successful. So I meet monthly with my friends out at Coke who have a strong desire to change our criminal justice system, and certainly have a strong desire to help those that need a hand up. And we know that we have some zip codes in our city where unemployment numbers will scare you to death, that we've got to figure out how to reach them. And so part of my duties on that workforce board is how do we implement strategies that will change some of these poorest zip codes and give them opportunities. And so we're doing some things where we're encouraging, if incentives are used, that the first step before gaining some of those incentives, when they're doing some job program, career fairs, that they reach out to certain zip codes first and allow those in that zip code to have first dibs at some of these new opportunities in our community. But we haven't figured it out yet. There are still communities that are hurting more than they should. And so how to lift those is a challenge, and I would love to figure out the perfect formula that cures that.
When you find it, package it, because many other mayors would like to have that.
Well, and it's a challenge in many cities, and I get that. And so we deal with that, some homeless issues that I wish we could conquer that come with a number of mental health issues that we haven't seemed to be able to get beyond. And so we certainly have our challenges out there in our community, but we're going to keep working hard and try and move our community forward.
So let's continue on this human level. Tell us, what are your happiest moments?
Oh my. So I love just seeing people have success. And I think it's truly part of our human nature. I will tell you that I'm certainly happier when I see my own kids have success, as I would suspect most Americans are. You want that next generation to have more opportunities than what you have. But and my wife has to remind me of this, that oftentimes, so I love giving gifts but hate receiving gifts. And she goes, honey, you know why you love giving gifts? Because it makes you feel good. So don't you think you're cheating people if you don't allow them to have that same feel-goodness in them? And and so she reminds me that generous people have to be able to receive as well as give. But I just love seeing people have success at all levels, whether it's my kids, whether it's people in this community have success. And
When was the last time you cried?
so I'm not an emotional person by nature. I have a difficult time showing my emotions, and so I'm very uncomfortable with that. But as I've aged, it seems that I oftentimes get more emotional, and I'm at my...
So you do get emotional.
So I do. I was a little bit overwhelmed at my swearing in at becoming mayor, just at the opportunity to govern this city, and an opportunity that I wasn't sure that I was ever going to get, and that was a very emotional moment for me. I had a granddaughter recently, our second granddaughter that was born just a year ago, so her birthday is this next week, and her mother went through a almost 40-hour labor process, and so that was an emotional experience as well.
What does Mayor Longwell do in his spare time?
Oh, so I do enjoy playing golf when I get the opportunity, and not that I'm any good at it, but it just is something relaxing about getting out on a golf course and just enjoying the beauty of our green space and the fresh air, and just kind of relieves stress when you're away from the hustle and bustle.
Looking back at your life to today, if you could change or redo one thing in your life, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. So I could come up with a whole series of regrets. You know, there's regrets all the way through life. Personally, I wish I wasn't at times so short-tempered or impatient. I wish I would show more empathy than I sometimes show. I wish I could have spent more time with my kids as they were growing up. I miss them greatly now that they're all successful and out on their own. And
Right.
so I could come up with an entire half-hour show on my regrets, Victor. Thank you.
Well, okay, let's move on to the city here again. Give us your vision for Wichita 10 years from now.
So I think we need to focus on quality of life. And quality of life is going to mean something different for every person that you sit down with. And so I continue to tell people that we need to paint quality of life with a very broad brush. So for some, it's going to be the new ballpark. For others, it's going to be a performing arts center. For some, they just want that safe, leisurely place to go take a stroll with themselves or a loved one. And so continuing to grow our safe walking paths. So it's something different for everyone. I want to see us expand our performing arts opportunities, our park and rec opportunities, because we know that that's important to people. I want our citizens to enjoy. I want us to get to a place where Wichita is that city that they choose. So I love McConnell Air Force Base, and so I'm now honorary commander of the 931st, which is great, but they have a saying out there that I just absolutely love. They like to share with people that they're here by chance, but they stay by choice.
Oh.
And I think that's a wonderful thing for us to have, where people choose Wichita,
Right.
that just happen to stumble across us, but we're a city that they just truly want to be at and in, and raise their family in.
So let's play this little word game.
All right.
I'm sure you've seen us do it before, but
Yes.
this one is a little different. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, rank the following statements as they pertain to you in terms of the level of importance.
Okay.
A quality of life.
Number 10.
Family.
Oh boy, 10,
Money.
4,
Your career.
5,
Faith.
10,
Technology.
10,
Global warming.
6,
Legacy.
5,
Health.
9,
Honesty.
10,
Public television.
10.
So, what can we expect from you as mayor? What are your aspirations? Future political aspirations, I'm talking about.
Well, my wife told me a long time ago that I can do anything I want politically as long as it doesn't take me out of Wichita, Kansas.
Oh.
And so I've reached my pinnacle in my political career. I've had people ask me if I have any desire to go on to other offices like state or federal, and I have emphatically said no, and I mean that. I would love to see our city continue to provide opportunities, and if I can help guide our city into those opportunities for the future, I would love an opportunity to do that. I'm early in my mayoral career, so I still have a chance as we continue down this path of growing our city. If I can serve one more term, the reality is at the end of my second term, I will be just a few months shy of my 65th birthday, and I don't have any desire at that point to do anything else politically. I like the fact that we have an opportunity to shape politics from a local perspective, and I've always said that politics were always meant to be local. It's where we can
So true.
really touch people more than any other form of government, because we are the closest to the people. And I think it'd be hard pressed for me personally to move to a different level and have that same level of satisfaction. And so local politics is it for me. Maybe enjoy my grandkids more after that.
Well, on that note, Mayor Jeff Longwell, thank you so much for joining us one-on-one.
Victor, thank you. And
Appreciate
good luck.
you being here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my pleasure.
We wish the mayor the best of luck, personally and professionally, and we thank you for watching this week's edition of One-on-One. You can watch this and every episode anytime on kpts.org. Send your questions or comments to oneonone@kpts.org, and we may just read it on television. We'll see you again next week with another intriguing conversation. I'm Victor Hogstrom. Thanks for watching.
The Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek Trust, supporting arts, history, science, and this program on KPTS.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, offering 40 years of media experience.